Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Friday Worlds of Wow Facebook Live. We are so excited to have you join us once again. Of course, joining me again today is Kevin Cravens. Kevin, as you have grown to know, or maybe you're just tuning in for the very first time, Kevin is a creative director at Worlds of Wow. And has been with WOW and creating amazing spaces for many, many years. Maybe I shouldn't share how long you've been with us, Kevin.
All right.
No, Kevin's been with us for a long time, and he's a truly genius at what he does. If you don't know much about Worlds of WOW, we are a interior design, theming, and indoor playground company where we transform spaces. And we have, for the month of June, we've been talking about play and learning a lot about play and the benefits of it. And today we're going to be talking about play as it pertains to sensory rooms and the value that exists there. And so joining us today is Erin Barnes. Erin is the owner of Unwind Sensory Institute and Outpatient Pediatric Therapy. She is an expert when it comes to creating spaces. And so we're really excited to have Erin with us today. And quite frankly, this may be the best one yet, in my opinion, as far as the episodes for play. So Erin, welcome to the show. Please share us a little bit more about who you are and really how you got to this journey of partnering and helping boys and girls and moms and dads of all abilities in creating sensory rooms.
Yes, thank you guys so much for having me. I don't know about expert, and I definitely don't know about the best one because I've definitely tuned in, and you guys have had some awesome people on here. So a little bit about me. I'm an occupational therapy assistant. I started, I've been doing this about 10 years. And so I started in homes doing home health, pediatrics. And the population that really spoke to me were my autistic friends, which obviously had a lot of sensory processing disorder going on. And so that was very inspiring to me to see kind of how they get through their day, how parents help them get through their day. And so while I was in the home, I got to see a whole lot of one-on-one, not only with the kiddo, but also with the parent. And so during that time, I did a lot of DIY with the parent to figure out what's going on. Why are they jumping? Why are they rolling? Why are they doing some of these activities? And so, kind of digging down with them. During that time, I realized not only does a child possibly need a little bit of a getaway for a sensory, to get away a bit, but so does the parent. And so that's where we came up with Unwind Sensory. And so that's where we worked with you guys, and we helped to create some fun rooms where they could wind up, wind down, do some water play, and do some fun things like that. Also during that time when we were when I got to have some more one-on-one time with the parents while the kids were back getting their time, I got to chat with a lot of parents and figure out what is it that's missing? What is it that you feel is that due to your life as a parent and with your life with a special needs kiddo, what would improve that? And I how I told you guys, I'd say 85-90% of the time, those parents are telling us, church. I'd love to get back in church. That's where I once was plugged in, and now we have a really hard time finding a place to fit in schematically, and just being able to feel like I can walk in a place and drop off my kid and feel good about it. And then we've all heard that term, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so many times I feel like those parents are living is kind of in that empty cup. They're not getting that socialization. They're not getting to go and kind of feed their soul. And then their kids aren't getting that as well. So then when we kind of did a roundtable approach and just kind of got to start chatting with some of the churches that have reached out to you guys, it's super exciting to look at doing some more consulting and just kind of helping create some of those environments.
For sure. No, thanks for that, Erin. And yeah, that's The past several years definitely has been more and more of an interest of churches we partner with wanting to, develop a sensory room. Churches, pediatric, family entertainment centers. I mean, just really, it's kind of all over the place of just that desire. So I'm hoping today is a little bit of understanding sensory rooms a little better. I know you've helped me kind of broaden my perspective and have a deeper understanding, a little more of the why behind it, beyond just this room labeled sensory room or special needs room. But really, there's a lot of intention and thought that goes behind it. So it is something that's helpful and great and playful for kids and parents. So Todd, you got anything else? I'm just going to jump into some questions.
Yeah, I was thinking, especially that, Erin, as we are in churches, and we're in churches a lot, we see sensory rooms as an afterthought, right? We see it oftentimes tucked into a corner. We see it maybe put into a closet. And the attempt is to do something. But I think one of the reasons I'm really excited about today's conversation is there's more that can be done, and quite frankly, more should be done. Now, I know we met, I want to say, what was it, several months ago at our WOW offices, and we were talking and roundtabling with a number of churches, and different churches have different approaches, but depending upon what approach you have, would be to the extent that you would have a sensory room or not. But for those churches that are looking at having a sensory room, I think today's conversation is going to be so important about what we're going to be talking about. So really excited about that. And Kevin, I think you referenced, just let's be a little bit more intentional about what we do. And part of that too, Erin, and what we're excited about you is the role of educating churches and individuals of what can be done and what should and shouldn't be done as well. So really excited about that. Kevin, without further ado, man, take it away.
For sure. Yeah, just to piggyback off that a little bit, Todd, we did that roundtable several months ago, and for me it was really good. On top of having Erin and several churches there with us, we had a few parents there with us as well. And so I think one of my big takeaways was again going back to hopefully taking it beyond just having a room and just labeling it sensory room. I mean, there's a way to do it in a way that is going to be helpful. And really, that's something I learned from the parents who were there, and some just from their experience, go to some churches, and maybe it almost would have been better maybe not to have the sensory room if it's not done well or not done right. So, Erin, just with that said, I'm gonna start big and broad. What is a sensory room, and maybe what's the purpose of a sensory room?
So I think the best way to explain a sensory room would be you're wanting to take away some of that overwhelming environment. So, take a church, for example. In our church, they've made it a really fun environment for those of us that have executive functioning that's working on all wheels when we're walking in.
Mm-hmm.
And so sync with me, and you've got all the music. So they've got fun music playing. You walk in the doors, they've got coffee made, they have donuts, they have greeters, which great, fabulous. People are volunteering to tell you, hey, how's your week? Shake your hand, well, bump elbows now.
Yep.
But kind of that whole environment. And so for you or I, maybe we've had a hard week. Maybe we've don't really feel like doing the whole great week. Thanks for asking. We can verbalize and say, hey, I'm good, man. Thanks for asking. I'm going to go grab a seat. And that's our way of kind of getting ourselves to our just right and getting away. But then you have a kiddo who may not have that executive functioning or does, and all of it hits them all at once. And then they go into that fight, flight, or freeze mode. And so that's when a lot of times those of us who may not know exactly what that might look like, that's fight. We all know what that looks like.
Yep.
Flight, and that's getting the heck out of Dodge. And so, and all of those can look so differently in every kid. And so that's when you see a tantrum or a meltdown. And so our idea of a sensory room would be to provide a getaway from all of this. So the fluorescent lighting, the sounds, the smells, the people. And so you would want to create a place where maybe they have to get through this point. Or maybe we've talked about, even possibly doing, separate doors or some other things like that. But once they get there, it's a time where it kind of just can melt off. No, it's not going to be immediate. They're not going to walk in and all of a sudden, the angels are singing and it's just greatness. But it's able to provide a way for them to almost detox a little bit in that room.
Okay. So, and then I guess, and this is, I think I have it when it comes to sensory rooms. I mean, it's not an escape from anything sensory. I mean, it is a sensory room. So there's things that are in there, I guess, for them to actively engage their senses, I guess, in the way that's comfortable to them.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
So it could be providing some vestibular, some proprioceptive, some different tactile.
Yep.
And how we talked about, or how I said a second ago with the lighting, maybe it's just less. It's less is more is not always more.
Okay.
And so for some of our kiddos, just having that, just some of those items removed, but then having some different things in place for them that are purposeful.
Okay.
We can start steering them towards. And so in that room, you might have some volunteers that are educated and that know, hey, I see him flapping. So for that, hey, let's go and try this item over here.
Okay.
There's no standard, just like all of our children, they don't come out the same. And so there's no standard, if they're doing this, you're going to do this. But having all of those present is absolutely going to help us get to a point where we can help and try to help. And then in turn, you're giving that parent a bit of a retreat, and where they get to socialize, they get to be able to be a part of that group and worship. So many times at Unwind, whenever I was talking to the parents, they said, we try. And so I said, well, church, where did you go before? Well, we've tried, and we get our number called, or somebody comes in and taps us on the shoulder for that dreaded
Yeah.
Sure.
Sure.
And so not only did you just fight the good fight to get there and to walk in and to drop them off, but then on top of that, now you're having to leave and kind of do that march out and then go get your kiddo, load back up. And I don't know that I'd want to do that more than once.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, they don't ever feel, mom and dad don't feel like they can relax. I know Jenny had said it last week. We were talking about inclusive playgrounds, and I know you've said it a few times, but I guess it's just that thing too of ultimately when you boil it down, mom and dad want their kiddos, and the kiddos want to feel and know they belong. And so yeah, just having to do that march on a weekly basis, I mean, does kind of set you apart, it feels like, and doesn't allow them to be present or a part of the community in the way seems like, yeah, I mean, all of us would long for.
Right. And when you take away, when I said a minute ago, the executive functioning, that is, so the definition of that is well, it's long, but it's basically managing daily life. So the opposite of that would be where it's hard to focus, follow directions, and then ... learn.
Sure.
So, I mean, if you're removed from being able to just follow directions, you're not learning anything. You're not at a place where you can take in new information. So you think about being at church, and as a parent, you want them to go in and learn about Noah's Ark, and you want them to learn about David, and you want them, all of that. And if you have so much going on, they're not learning that. They're not able to hear those stories. And that's what you're not only taking them to do that, but to socialize. You're not socializing if you're not able to process.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so the sensory, I mean, it's not an absence of anything sensory. I mean, it's
an overload
to engage their senses in a way that works for them. But what's the benefit? What's the importance of actively engaging our senses, no matter what it looks like?
So that's the exact opposite of what we did. So again, you walk in, put it in an adult form, and the smells, the lights, the people, the new faces, you don't remember anything you learned. You don't remember that Todd was who I just greeted. You don't remember what in the world, the songs. You don't remember. You just kind of start removing yourself from all of that. And so there's really, you've taken away the reason that you're going. You've taken away being able to socialize and meet friends. So you're removing all ability to be able to do that. Not that they can't self-regulate, and not that a kiddo won't be able to get there, but the chances that they're going to get there during the time frame of being in class while mom's in or dad is in worship, it's pretty slim.
Okay. No, I think that makes sense. So tell me, I mean, just with your experience, and just thinking maybe to those mom and dads that you've talked to didn't have such good experience, no matter where that was. I mean, I guess the story that maybe stood out to you of when, you've been working with a kiddo and they got to their, I know we talked about this before, but their just right moment where they were able to engage their senses in an appropriate way, organize their thoughts. And tell me about a time that stood out to you when you saw that happen, and what that meant to the kiddo even.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's just a ton of those stories. And one that probably stood out the most would be a lot of times when the parents would come in, they felt like they needed to kind of download all the information for the kiddo. And so he can talk, but he won't because there's so much going on. Or, hey, he's a runner, or, physical or whatever it was. And so this specific kiddo was a runner. And to the point of us being with them a couple of sessions, we weren't hearing any words. We weren't hearing yes, no. And so he wasn't able to verbalize wants or needs or, hungry and, all of that.
Sure.
And so mom had just expressed to us, he can, but getting him to that just right is really hard. And so we took him back and we had him on climbing walls, and it was session after session of, trying to figure out how much input does he actually need here, which was a whole lot. And so, but we got him to that just right. And so we would be in the middle of the session and he would climb across, jump off, roll around. And then he started being able to do some spelling. He actually, because the whole time we're asking questions. Do you like that? Are you having fun? Can I sing the ABCs with you? Just doing some things. And there wasn't a whole lot of response for a while. And then he started whispering, yes. And so getting to walk out and tell mom, hey, we got it. Not only did we get his just right, but we're now to the point where now we know what we're going for. And so we're able to help him learn, and we're able to get some of those responses. And that was just a huge benefit to mom when they left, because he was at that just right. And so the conversations that they were able to have, some of that one-on-one time that they were able to experience that they hadn't necessarily on a daily basis before.
Sure. So so what was it about? Okay, so he was a runner, or it sounded like a little bit of runner, a little bit of climber. It sounds like action. But what was it about? Yeah, just the traverse wall that got him. So the traverse wall, I guess, how you do, I guess you said the just right point, and then like he was in a spot where he wanted to communicate, whether it was verbally or something else. But what was it? What is it about that got him there, or helped with that?
So we all, perceive things differently. And so the way, there's no way to know exactly what was going on there. But the way he was perceiving, it was overwhelming. Everything was too much. And so he was needing an extra proprioceptive. And then, so that was the proprioceptive, the rolling, the balance side of it. And then I think I said that backwards. And then the vestibular side was the rolling and the balance and all of that. And then the proprioceptive was the heavy work. And so the joint compression. And so what he's getting from, he knows he needs it. He doesn't know why he needs it. He just knows that he feels the need to get this right now. But so it's our body seeking that. We know, excuse me, I don't feel right. This isn't where I want to be at. And so I'm going to keep going until I figure out exactly what that is.
Sure.
So that was why, and she was kind of giving us some previous notes, that he's a climber, that he was always on top of the swing set, always
Yeah.
to the top of whatever. And so we were like, oh, climbing wall, that was easy.
Yep. There we go. Okay. So what was that? I mean, you come out, kiddos, he's communicating verbally at this point. I mean, what is that like for mom and dad when they're in an area or a space that made that investment in their kiddos, and just, I mean, what's it like for mom to see something like that?
It's very, it's overwhelming, and it's overwhelming as a therapist too. Yes, we do this often, and yes, this is something that you hope for and that you're reaching for, every single time, but you don't get that every time.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming for everybody. So, excuse me. So for mom to get to hear, he said, what? He was singing lyrics to a song. What? I didn't even know, that he was listening. And I know that that's one of the things that, I believe it was last week that you guys touched on. Play is the work of a child. And so we often think that it's extra, but it's not. It's how they're learning. And so I don't know how many times, even just as a mom, I will think, I'm not getting through to them. They are not even listening to me right now.
Mm-hmm.
But as they're rolling, as they're swinging, as they're doing whatever it is, they can come back and quote to me almost to a T what I've said, because they're able to get it with multiple senses. They're hearing me. So
Yep.
it was really cool for mom,
And I love that. Yeah, it just further reinforces that idea, and I think that passion we've caught, an evangelist for the idea of that really the power of play, and play has a purpose beyond just that extra thing you do. So man, I love that. Okay. So I'm thinking, so if a church, say church, pediatric office, family entertainment center, and if they kind of in the spot where like, we want to do a sensory room and do it right. Kind of wonder maybe we spend some time talking about, where they should start, what that should look like. Maybe a good place to start. I'm going to go back to something you said earlier of mom and dad going to church and maybe not such a good experience. But I think you had said something about all the work they had to do to get to the point of going to church. So it sounds like, if we're gonna have a sensory room or kind of have that sort of environment, I mean, the church's involvement or any place's involvement sounds like it starts before somebody walks through the door even.
Right.
Or good.
Right. Well, and I think that's something that that most caregivers who have typical children, you don't realize what that has looked like, what that looks like. There are typically picture schedules that are involved that lay out a day for a kid. I don't necessarily have to do picture schedules for my children. I can go in and say, hey, in 5 minutes, we're heading out. That's not something that a mother of an autistic child can typically do. Usually it requires a whole wind up to even get to that point. And then there's clothing. Most autistic children, not most, there's a lot of autistic children who, or sensory processing, not even just autistic, clothing that is just so constricting. I would absolutely rather not. And so you are getting to the point of, where one, we're going somewhere. Two, now you have to have clothes on. You have not set off that small, tiny human, and not a positive manner.
Sure.
And there's just all the things that requires. At getting in the car, now all of the people, the hustle and the bustle. There's not usually an easy transition for those families. And so, yes, I think that what you mentioned earlier, there just needs to be so much thought put into these rooms. It can't just be, hey, we have an extra closet, I think we're going to throw a ball, and not that there's anything wrong with that. If where you're at, that's great.
Sure.
But I think as a parent and as a caregiver, to know that extra has been put into to figure out what would work best for your kid. I don't think there's a better feeling than knowing, hey, they put some time into my kiddo.
Sure. And then Todd, we visited a church not too long ago, back before all this, when we were flying and visiting churches. But You want to talk a little bit? I mean, they were very intentional about their ministry, and they actually did a lot of work for those families that Erin's talking about that showed up, and what it looked like for them to get, from the parking lot to, where they needed to be.
Yeah, they did, and their conversation was having a separate entrance for children and adults, quite frankly, that have potentially have sensory overload. So it's more of a calm environment, just less people. Erin, speaking to that a little bit as well about the value of just a separate entrance, if especially of churches designing an entrance just for children and adults with special needs, and what's the value of having a separate entrance in a space like that?
I think it's pretty great, just because, again, you want church to feel inviting to everybody, and so you have a lot of adults that isn't overwhelming to. You have a lot of children that isn't overwhelming to, and so you don't necessarily want to take away that element. And so I definitely think having a separate entrance where you're not having to stand out to check in your children with a ton of other kids running around, and my children, popping each other and jumping up and down and doing all of that. So I definitely think having a separate entrance where one, maybe they have the same person that's checking them in every time, and so you're already starting that out on just a good foot. I know that's not always possible, but something that would definitely be a positive. And then just removing all of the extra sound to where maybe they could go directly from that entrance to the room. I know for parents, knowing I didn't just go through World War III to drop them off, and they're happy. And as a parent, you don't want to have them pulled off of you as you're going into worship, and the whole time you're thinking, oh my goodness, I hope they're having a good time, I hope they're learning. And so it just kind of starts that on the right foot, and just a peaceful environment for them.
Well, and I love, both of you keep coming back to that, to mom and dad, and I think we obviously work with a lot of churches, and it's very much, I think kids ministry, it's very much seen as a partnership between the church and the parent. And if churches are going to, have that expectation, I think that's the right approach. Then yeah, it is as much about mom and dad that they're able to be present physically, but also mentally and emotionally for the services too. They need to be fed if they're going to be in partnership, working with their kiddos at home to teach them about Jesus, teach them about life with God, and that, right? So I guess I just keep coming back to, even a sensory room is just like all of kids ministry. It's very much a family ministry. It's very much a family endeavor, not just for the kiddo. Okay. So the separate entrance, and then we have the room, and actually Erin and I have been working on a mock-up. We were going to pop up here in a little bit just to talk through some specific things and what it could look like, which I think is going to be really good. But I guess, so family comes for the first time though, Erin, what's that first time visit look like? Like, what would be the ideal situation for them?
The ideal situation would probably be the first time not be on a Sunday morning.
Okay, yep.
To probably get a preview. Probably providing that kiddo with, hey, this is where we're going. We had mentioned previously having, like that visual schedule for them. And so maybe that would be one of the things that you provide to the parent when they come, maybe say the night before, like on a Saturday afternoon, maybe being able to provide them with that, some kind of a magnet or a sticker or something to show them, hey, this is, to help correlate, this is where we are. And then tomorrow morning when we wake up, this is where we're going. And so you're already helping them process that and transition that a little bit.
Okay.
And then it's going to be a workup from parents to talk about some triggers, some things that they get a lot of excitement out of, something that will help possibly be a motivator for them. Bubbles, bubbles work for everybody. And so maybe some different things like that you're helping whoever's going to be in that room be able to know, okay, hey, he's melting down. It's not a problem. Mom told me he really likes textures. Mom told me he really loves to roll and bubbles. And so you're equipping them with the knowledge. And then you're also letting the parent feel comfortable with knowing, hey, we're walking away. So I would have, a information sheet so that both parties walking away, the teacher and the parent, feel comfortable. And then just letting the kid hang out in the room for a few minutes, and just becoming aware, the smells, the sounds, the lights, just having it exactly how it would be, and basically do a mock-up of what that would look like.
Okay. So, I know we've talked to some churches. They have somebody on staff, I think, kind of like you, who's trained in a background that would be helpful, just with a sensory room or other inclusive environments. But if a church wasn't quite there yet, but they knew this is something they wanted to do, I mean, what are the important things when it comes to having volunteers in the sensory room week after week?
It's important to have the volunteers that want to be there, and it's important to have a group of the same volunteers. This is definitely not where you're going to continually rotate different people.
Okay.
Not that you can't add new faces, but there needs to obviously be some crossover there.
Okay.
You're wanting to create that place of calm and familiarity for those kids. So definitely trained individuals that know how to, to be quite frank, they can get kiddos who are overwhelmed can very easily become, again, that fight, flight, or freeze, can become very agitated and can very much, when they're not able to calm themselves down, can become aggressive. And so you're gonna want somebody who feels comfortable and knows how to deflate that situation and carefully get them and the kiddo out of that situation, and to where a parent knows we're in good hands here.
Sure. Okay. So, and I think I keep hearing, I guess I'm going to use the word, but I think I keep hearing, consistency and routine seem like for mom and dad and for the kiddo, it seems pretty critical.
Right.
Okay. So volunteers, it's a same set of volunteers, or if there's going to be a transition out, it just can't be a one volunteer this week, another volunteer next week, and there has to be some sort of overlap and transition. Sounds like okay. So, so I think that's pretty straightforward. But what about training? Like if the volunteers need a training, how would a church go about that?
Me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah. Here's your moment, Erin.
Just any special needs people, anybody who has been who has worked in that environment. Most of the time, a lot of the kids are going to school, and so they have a volunteer that maybe they are pretty familiar with, and so I've seen where parents have reached out to them, and they're going to go with them and kind of be their buddy to train at the churches, or just reach out to some kind of a consultant, somebody who can just give you the things that you're looking for. So when a kiddo's flapping, this might be something you might try, and just kind of arming them with some knowledge. Nobody wants to walk into a situation feeling like I have no idea what I'm doing here. I don't care what we're talking about. And so, I would just say training your volunteers, and not only does that help the volunteers, but that's going to help mom and dad to know you put the time into figuring this out for my kid. You took the time to train to know what would work best for him. That's a very calming feeling, for the parent too. And I know we keep coming back to this, but it's so important. It is about the kid, but it's also about the parent. And so many times, I think, churches don't necessarily know who's coming in their door that could benefit from this. I think oftentimes we all go to the visual, and so you think, I see 5 kids coming in a wheelchair. It's not that big of a need, which 5 is a lot, so that was a bad number. But so maybe they just don't see, they wouldn't actually see it as a need. But it's that invisible diagnosis. It's the thing that maybe you don't see, and maybe the parent doesn't feel comfortable bringing up. But it's just as much a parent that you're ministering to by having this as it is a child.
Yep.
And maybe the parent's got 3 children and it's just one kid that's that is hindering them from feeling comfortable to be able to go, but they have mom, dad, and the 2 other kids that aren't able to come as well. So you're looking at a whole family that you're able to reach by having a sensory room.
Sure. So I pulled this graphic up. We had talked through this last week with Jenny, and I think kind of backs up what you're saying. So yeah, out of 1,000 children between the ages of 3 and 21, approximately 85 will have these disabilities. And typically, in that scenario, it's one is in some sort of mobility device or has a physical disability, but it is the cognitive, communication, social, emotional. So like you said, it's this was kind of a big aha moment for me, and just really broadened my perspective. Is when you say 5 kiddos walking through the door, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on with families, right? And so it's just not, if we're talking special needs or sensory rooms or disabilities, it's not always as straightforward as mobility device, right? So yeah, love that. And that's a good call out for sure.
Okay. That they say 1 in 20 have sensory processing disorders of some sort. That's significant. When you're looking at youth groups, and they may not all be something that you're necessarily going to see, but who could actually benefit from it. And we've talked before about how long that room is actually used for that kid. You may have some kids who that's their lifelong room. They're going there, they feel comfortable there. That's where they learn the best. And that's what parents comfortable with. It also might be a transition room. It might be where that family needs to use that back door for a while, side door for a while, transitioning them. And, 3 months in, mom may come and say, hey, you know what? Thank you so much. We needed that. He's now comfortable here, and he has transitioned. And we actually have started going back out the front door, and he's used to the sight, the smell, all of that. And so I think oftentimes they think, well, how in the world would we fit everybody into one room, or how do we make that work? We're not talking that everybody needs to stay there forever. It may just be a stepping stone to get them to a typical classroom. And that again is the training, and that's with the volunteers, and they're going to start seeing some of that. And again, back to the consistency, they're seeing, hey, Joe's been coming here for 3 weeks now, and we're making mountain moves. I mean, it's crazy. He keeps looking out the door. He wants to go. He's ready to go. I think next week, if you're good with it, I'd like to transition with him and for a few minutes and see what that looks like. So again, that's that consistency with those volunteers. So they know what Joe started out looking like, and they know what Joe looks like now. Yeah,
great. That's a really good call. All right. So I think let's jump over here. So this is a room we had put together. So just a few things. I have it mocked up roughly in a 3D program. But Erin and I, we kind of scribbled this out the other day and just kind of been going back and forth and come up with some ideas. And, just to start off, one of the things I love about this, and, just in my research of just, I guess, from that design or aesthetic side of sensory rooms, there's a lot of good stuff out there for sure. But I think sometimes, maybe a little samey. But just kind of working with Erin is, this room doesn't have to be something that I guess, kind of just have some stuff on the walls or whatnot. What I love about working with WOW is really working to tell that story. So I think overall, just kind of going back and forth, it kind of started naturally going in a little bit of a kind of a woodsy outdoor kind of look and feel, without over the top floor to ceiling murals everywhere, a bunch of 3D stuff or whatnot, but just through some of the colors and the shapes, really start to tell a story. And I think, kind of that ability to potentially activate imaginations is a part of the room as well. But Erin, I'll, I kind of go to some stuff, but, if you want to start talking about some areas, maybe we start with the traverse wall. I know you had brought that up earlier. and then what that could look like, and what some of the important things going on here.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned when we were today, which was I totally skipped over, but you had mentioned some of the curve lines and just how that is just obviously more aesthetic. It's more it's less aggressive, like the sharp line. And so I think when you look at this room, just the way that it's laid out, it just doesn't seem as I guess aggressive. It's just not coming at you.
Sure.
So there's that. So the traverse wall, when we were talking about that, there's the more that you can do with a room that has multiple uses, or being able to kind of tier it, and that's kind of what we were looking at with doing this. And so having different levels, again, with a kiddo, when you're talking with mom, we've had lots of kids who mom comes in and says, hey, they have a shunt, or hey, they have this. And so we need to make sure that they don't fall and hit their head. Well, not that you would want a kid to fall and hit their head, but this would be a kiddo that you would really be watching for this. And so we had talked about, doing some color coding on some of the wall to where maybe mom says, hey, I'm good with the bottom layer here. And so that gives you a visual as a volunteer to know, okay, we're good with this. We're not going any higher.
Sure.
Or your older kids. So you can have your tinies on this, and then you can have your older kids on this too, where they feel like it's age appropriate. And then they also don't feel like we're, making things too babyish for them.
For sure. And then we talked about, making the traverse wall, making it magnetic.
Mm-hmm. And so that would be able to help do any kind of like lessons, Bible plans. So you're just being able to incorporate that a little bit more, because as we talked about play, as they're getting that input, as they are being able to meet the needs that they currently have with their brain to calm down, we're also able to do a little bit of a lesson. So climb across and let's find Goliath, and yay, you grabbed Goliath. Let's talk about Goliath. Goliath is big, and you can, do some of those things. Goliath would jump. Can you show me how you jump? And so that would be some fun ways that you would be able to incorporate what it is they're needing, but also talking about the lesson at the same time. Also, again, back to parents. So when parents come back in, say you've done this 10 times at this point, and so hey, we were learning about David and Goliath, and show us how Goliath was. And Goliath is big, and David had it, and so you can kind of reenact some of that with the parent. Again, you're just feeling like, wow, you weren't just climbing walls in here this whole time. You were able to make it part of a story. And that could just be week after week with different magnets, and being able to just repurpose, week after week.
Yeah. Well, I think, back to the kiddo we were talking about at the beginning, and having a graphic of Goliath able to, because it's magnetic, to pop up here and work with them to climb across, and then, kind of have that, create that opening for sure. And even the floor pads. So typically, we do like 2-inch floor pads, which, kind of meets the code, but, you had mentioned making those thicker. What's kind of the thinking behind that?
So that's more of that heavy work. And so a kid doesn't realize it. Again, he doesn't know why he's wanting to climb, why he's wanting to jump and roll and all of that. But, when you have less of a pad, it's a lot easier to walk off of that versus when you're sinking in just a little bit more and you're having to work a lot harder for that. So that's going to help to basically help with your, sorry, I just lost my words. Help calm you down a little bit.
Sure. Okay. Love that. I'm going to skip over here to made a little forest section. So I think you had mentioned flooring was a really big deal. We have some other things going on as well. But if this was some artificial turf, some thick artificial turf, and then having the trees, again, a little bit of a thematic element, and then having some different tactile elements or mirrors or other things going on the trees. Talk a little bit about that and the importance of some of the stuff going on here.
So you mentioned the theme, and that again goes back to the parents. I think walking into a room that has a fun theme, that again, you didn't just throw random things. You put a lot of thought into this.
Sure.
And so I think that just carries a lot of weight for a parent. So yes, so we had talked about um, just being able to purpose everything. So that was where we were looking at the different flooring, having different textures. So maybe a kid has thrown himself down. Maybe he's done with all things at this point.
Mhm.
But we're secretly giving him some tactile input. Some kids, that's absolutely aggressive and they have zero desire to touch that. Other kids rolling around on that is going to give them some of that input that we're secretly feeding to them that they don't realize. So as they're sitting on the ground, as they're looking at the mirror and getting some of that visual, they're also getting some of that tactile input as well. We had talked about the trees having different textures.
Yep.
And so being able, again, we're just, everything just has meaning. Everything has a purpose.
Mhm.
So as that kid thinks he's playing, he's just getting input after input, to where hopefully we're getting him at his just right, where
Mm.
then we're able to talk about whatever that lesson looks like for the day.
Sure. And I guess, I mean, working with somebody like you, it's not that everything in this room is something that every kiddo is going to use every week, but a lot of it is kind of some of the tried and true, and just sounds like understanding. I mean, really giving that volunteer, that caregiver, just kind of that world, that sandbox to play in, as they learn to help that kiddo get to their just right moment.
Yeah, you're kind of just providing them tools in their tool belt.
Mm.
And so instead of just, hey, let's run rampant around the room, and you're giving them that instruction, which again, you're going to be able to start seeing with that in executive functioning when they're starting to get their just right. Hey, Joe, let's go over here and let's play with the trees. Let's roll on the balls. Let's do some input. And so you're going to be able to start to see when they are starting to be able to follow some directions a little bit and follow your lead. So yeah, these are all just tools to be able to explain to the volunteer what it is that would possibly be the next step.
Sure. Right. And then we talked about, I mean, you had brought up, yeah, it's something as simple as a whiteboard, and then just with some power balls there. Talk a little bit about that, and how you used something like this in the past.
So with the balls, obviously, you're just getting some core. So this kind of goes back to ADHD kiddos, just being able to give some input. Their body's working when their body doesn't realize they're working.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, kind of just that side note, hey, this is what we're doing. You have no idea. You think you're sitting on a fun ball.
Yeah.
You can use the whiteboard as a fun way of drawing out some of the words. Again, you're tiering it. So you've got an older kiddo. Hey, let's hop on the ball and we're going to write out some words today. And we're going to go back to David and Goliath, and he threw a stone. And so we're going to go back through, and maybe that kiddo is writing it. Maybe you go to a younger kid. And so you're going to write out some of those words, and you're going to draw. You may have a tiny one, and you may have David, Goliath, a stone, and we may do shaving cream. And that would be a way to be able to incorporate some more of that tactile
Okay.
on that board as well.
Love that. So have you back out? I mean, in my world, yeah, like, man, you've gone on this adventure, right? Well, I'm going to stick over here. So, again, it's without like, again, I think the idea is not to really provide a lot of sensory overload, but still tell the story. And so it's really, just with some intentional placement of stuff. So some vinyl safety pads as the waterfall, and then really have that carry on to the floor with the carpet squares of being a river, right? And just opportunities even for, I would imagine if I was a caregiver, man, if I was a kiddo, just that opportunity to skip across the river, or use some of these other elements to kind of make some games or whatnot. But we have this here. We're gonna call this the steamroller. So this is a work in progress. But tell me about that idea and just what that means to really kind of work yourself through these tight spaces, and then also the kind of flooring we're looking at here versus in other places.
So that's that deep pressure. And so as a parent, when your baby is born, they teach you how to do a swaddle. It's that same concept. And so, how many times have our kids been just so overwhelmed and can't get their words, just crying, just having a hard time figuring out what it is that they're wanting to say? And so we're just like, hold on, come here, sit down,
Yep.
let me hug you, let's figure this out. And then, a few minutes later, we get through it, and it was the simplest of all things, but it just happened to be the needle that broke it all, or the hay, whatever, that broke it all. And so that's kind of the theme behind the steamroller. And so it's just that it gives you that deep pressure, that hug, that proprioceptive input. So you're having to work to get through, and then you're working to get through the next level of it.
Okay.
So it's basically just that big bear hug on the wall, and it's something that they can provide to themselves. Kind of odd for them to be up in your space, the entire time, hugging, and they do. I've had many patients where we hug the entire session, and I'm trying to do little things off to the side because that's what they're needing right then.
Yep.
But have an rhythm like this to where you can, hey, I'm going to climb through with you, and we're going to sing the books of the Bible, or Jesus loves me, or whatever that looks like. It's really not hard once you kind of put your mind in that creative mode. It's really not hard to start incorporating the Bible while you're doing whatever the activity is. But you're just kind of giving them that foundation to where they can be creative with what we've already provided to them.
Sure. So tell me about the flooring. You had mentioned doing a little bit of different flooring here as well.
So that would just go back to the same. I don't remember what this. So
It's like tile or VCT, right, versus a carpet square.
So again, just giving that different input to your hands while you're working. It all really just goes back to the same theory that maybe they don't know what it is that they're needing, but we're just trying to provide every step of the way.
Okay.
And so for this, this would be with my kiddos that they're throwing themselves down. Maybe my runners. I have had lots of parents where when I talk to them, I'll say, can you give me a little example when they're at home? Are they jumping on the couch and just continue upside down, jumping on the couch? Yes, absolutely. So with this, that first level, we would crawl through getting that input on our shoulders. And then we may even feed ourselves backwards through the second layer of that. And so, but the whole time while you're on the ground, you're getting that input through your hands, through your knees. Some of our kiddos without socks and shoes, so that just another way of doing that.
Okay. Great. So yeah, look at all these areas. So yeah, I got the mountains, you're in the forest, or the waterfall, playing in the water. It's kind of the story going on. But yeah, at the beginning or the end, really this, I think, an area you see pretty typically with the vinyl shapes, really giving some of that intention there. And we just kind of did it as base camp, right? That's the campground. And so talk a little bit about some of the things going on here.
Well, I want to go back to just because you had talked about like the river and all of that. So again, that's just providing that we're going on a bear hunt, or, whatever that theme is that you're doing that day. But you can even do some little pause along the way, helping them create exactly like what you're doing right there over the mountains, or, whatever that looks like. So just being so purposeful with everything along the way. So that would be fun. Back to your camp. That would be, so those are the fire, or the logs are kind of like those bolsters. And so that would be where you can roll yourself over it. Roll them with it. Again, just giving a lot of deep pressure, giving a lot of that input, climbing over what do you call that on the wall?
I'm going to call that the tent.
Okay. So
yeah, really use your imagination.
Yes. So you're climbing over the tent, you're climbing in the tent. We had talked about putting a little mirror inside of there just to use all space. So that would be more of a calming area. So maybe, the rock wall is kind of more of our wind up. Then you can work your way over to the tree. That's more of just that input. Then you go over and you're climbing through the forest, and you're getting lots of deep pressure along our river, and then we're over to our tent where maybe we learn a little bit of a lesson because maybe we've gotten some good input by that point. And maybe we do it 10 times before we're over to the tent.
And I think as we were going through this, you had kind of mentioned too, just even the idea of a campground and around the campfire, and really, a lot of the goal is, like the socialization. And so even I think, this is even communicating, just some of those social things that we do. Any thoughts on that, or man, Kevin, you're way off there?
No, yeah. I mean, you're just setting it up for a social interaction. And so maybe me and Joe have been kind of at different elements up until this point, and then me and Joe are meeting over at the fireplace. And so, hey, Erin, can you hand Joe your fire log? Can you're just creating that element for a socialization, or for that interaction.
Sure.
Which is so important for parents to know. Not only did we go, not only did they learn, but they got to talk to some friends too.
For sure.
And talk. I say that as this is for our nonverbal kiddos too. They got to interact with our friends. I don't know how many times we would have socialization groups, and one of the first thing a parent would say was, he's nonverbal. Awesome. They don't have to come and talk for us to be able to know that they're having fun. You can usually tell that pretty easily. Kids don't hide that. And so that would be a really great opportunity for that socialization where we don't have to talk. Maybe I talk, you listen, you hand me an activity, we color together, we do shaving cream together. That's just very fulfilling for a parent to know as well.
Yes, love that. And then we talked about lighting a little bit. I was going to go, I guess after this part, kind of talk about some things we didn't include right now and why. But just kind of talked about, if you had some fluorescent lighting up there and some things we could do. You can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, just toning it down. Fluorescent lighting is just so coming at you. It's just more, and it's really just harsh. And so it's what we're looking at is just kind of dimming that down just a little bit, because again, you've come in, it's sunny outside. It's bright in the foyer area, and then you're coming through, and you're just kind of setting the mood for them just a little bit and just toning it down. So
yep. So we have just with some colored film over the fluorescent lights, or some prints over the fluorescent lights. We've printed clouds on them there. I know we've talked about potentially clouds in here as well. And then if there is an opportunity, I know you had mentioned, if this was a new build or a renovation, or even if it's an existing room, that ability to put in a dimmer sounded like it was pretty important as well.
Yeah, just because you don't know. We don't know. I would definitely say fluorescent is a no-go. But even just like the LEDs or whatever, having the ability to do light, dimmer for a campfire, or brighter for when we're singing and jumping and doing that. So, but just being able to change that up depending on what each kid needs.
Yep. So I think our time's about wrapping up. So I just this room, and I think what was important, and we did this exercise together, is, if I look at a lot of sensory rooms, and then if you start looking at what it would look like to put that together, it's a lot of going all over the place, right? So you have a lot of times you're going to see on top of this, you're going to see the projectors, you're going to see some of the special lighting or the backlit elements or the water tubes or things like that, right? Which are all great and sound like important. But I think our exercise here was really to try and create something that kind of you can get. Really, if it was Worlds of WoW or somebody else, like, you can get somebody to do this for you all at once, and anything on top of that is even better, right? And so I think my understanding a little bit of this world too is there's a lot of DIY and having to go all over the place. So a little bit of the exercise is really working to make a room that if Worlds of WoW is going to partner with somebody, this is a room we could provide from top to bottom, front to back, and it's ready to go.
Right, and it's simple. It doesn't have all of the and the lighting, all of that, the water play, all of that is super fabulous, and not knocking any of that. But when you're looking at being at church for an hour, and that you're wanting to do some learning and you're wanting to do possibly some singing and socialization, So this is a pretty simple way of being able to get a lot of that input and hopefully being able to then draw close and get some of that learning into.
Yep, exactly. And so, yeah, so I think it was an interesting exercise. I think we pulled it off. I know I learned a lot, and I think we're going to continue to finish this out and roll out some other things along these lines. So, Todd, I'm going to let you wrap it up. But Erin, yeah, thank you very much. Like, this was great. Every other interaction has been great, and I know for me, like, this has been really good, and just that awareness and that education. And so, yeah, just thank you so much for your time today and for your friendship.
Thank you guys for having me.
Hey, Kevin, just out of curiosity, if I was thinking through the lens of one of our guests as they're looking at this space and they say, man, that is so amazing. I would love to have that in my space. Can you give me an idea as far as the dimensions or the size of that room?
Yes. So this is 20 by 21. So might be a little bigger than the average classroom for most churches, but not much.
Yeah, again, I'm just thinking of that church perhaps that's looking, like I had 4 conversations this week with churches that are in that, hey, we're building a building. We'd like to get you in early. We'd like to start talking with you about creating a space. Yeah, I mean, it's a conversation would be, how big do we make this room? And that's probably a conversation for another day, Erin, or maybe we have a couple of different rooms per se that look like that. But the reality is that engaging with the experts on our team at Worlds of Wow, where we can find out what your needs are, as well as incorporate Erin Barnes and have Erin come in and consult with you. And one of the things too, Erin, we talked about as we're having a conversation right now with another church, and that is, hey, when we get this type of room created, we need some help. We need some training to, really help our volunteers understand how we can best utilize this space. Talk to us a little bit briefly, Erin, real quick as we're wrapping up of, hey, what services you offer and how you can benefit a church like that.
So I think that's just basically kind of coming in, and it can be virtually, it can be, in person, finding out what the space is going to look like, what the entrance is going to look like. And then just doing some training. Here's some things that we're looking for when this happens. So, it's not ending our world. We can absolutely work our way out of that. Everybody just wants to be equipped. And so that would be, I would be able to go in and do some training and just equipping you with some knowledge to where you feel comfortable being left in that room, and to where the parent feels comfortable and the kid trusts you.
Yeah, that's so helpful. I mean, and again, the conversations I have often of, hey, we don't know where to start. They're looking for resources. Oftentimes it's through the public school system, or other times it's like, the situation we're talking about here. It's bringing in an expert to walk them through, to prepare them, to help them, to guide them, to give them tangible things that they can do on a day in and day out basis. So again, Erin, we're so grateful for you to be a part of today's conversation. And if someone wanted to contact you directly, what's the best way that they can reach out to you?
We have our Unwind Facebook, our Unwind website, and then from there you can go in and make a comment, contact me, and send an email, and then I'll reach out.
Fantastic. Very good. Kevin, again, great job. Erin, thank you. Man, another episode just packed full of incredibly helpful information. So, Kevin, do we have a teaser for next week?
Teaser for next week. Yes, we are going to be talking compliance for play next week. So I'm going to wake you up right now. We promise we're working on making it fun, making it, and then making it very practical, right? But there's a lot of regulations and codes that you have to be aware of as you go into planning a play area. Ultimately, the goal is to keep the kiddos safe. But if you're an environment that's making an investment like this, the goal is also not to have the fire marshal come in and shut you down because you missed something, right? And so we are going to be having Andrew Kinney, our operations director, join us. And we're going to have some fun talking compliance, believe it or not.
Fun and compliance. I'm telling you, there's an equal,
we're going to figure it out.
Hashtag through it. But bottom line is it's so incredibly important. As man, we preach this all the time to our clients. So this is, again, it's going to be really, really beneficial. So again, thank you for joining us today on another episode of Facebook Live here on the Worlds of Wild channel. Have a great rest of your day. Oh, by the way, if you've not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please be sure to join us there and like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.